The big, beautiful bill, Chairman of the Freedom Caucus, Congressman Andy Harris, breaks it down for us in less than 60 seconds.
Well, Sean, what we have is we have a bill that both combines the tax cuts that are necessary, extending those tax cuts from the first Trump administration, and spending reduction. And spending reduction, ending waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid program, very, very important, plus hundreds of billions of dollars a year, while increasing the rest of Medicaid spending. And what we do is we look at the Green New Scam subsidies and roll most of them back. Those are two really important parts of this bill.
All right, guys, it is Wednesday. We're on a glide path to the weekend as far as I can tell. Although apparently there's some rain in the area, which I right when I get excited for the weekend, there you go. We'll see how it turns out. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. A huge show headed your way right now. Congressman Andy Harris, he's the chairman of the Freedom Caucus. These guys are at the tip of the spear of fighting for deficit reduction, lower government. And Chairman Jim Jordan of the Judiciary Committee is also a Freedom Member Caucus. They're both here. If you want to know what's happening with this bill, if it's going to pass, where the hurdles are, sit back, relax. I got this thing covered for you. This is where it's going to go down. I'm so excited because both of them are going to explain what matters, where the things are. So just trust me, sit back, relax. And by the way, what a week we have going for you. Tomorrow, a huge panel show. Tim Graham of the Media Research Center is going to be here. Elsa Kurt, this will be the first time she's joining our panel. She's fantastic. She's funny. She's going to be on there as well. And I've got, again, I said this yesterday. I can't tell you exactly, but trust me when I tell you, a special guest is going to join the panel that you will not have seen coming. And then Friday, by the way, White House Deputy Chief of Staff James Blair. You guys loved him during the campaign season. He was the political director for the campaign. He's Deputy White House Chief of Staff, oversees a lot. You want to talk about the big, beautiful bill, keeping the House, et cetera. This guy's going to break it all down for us. What's important? We've got it all with James Blair on Friday. And then next week, Linda McMahon, Secretary of Education, talking about taking on Harvard. Victor Davis Hanson coming up a few weeks later. I mean, we're on fire, guys. Before I get to Congressman Harris and then Congressman Jordan, I want to tell you about my buddy Leo Grillo. You guys have heard this. If you're a watcher of the show, Leo's been basically with us since the beginning, and we have grown to be good friends. We text often. I love what this guy did. I rescued 3 dogs, but I got them from shelters. Leo Grillo started with one Doberman that he found on the side of the road. He named the dog Delta, dedication, everlasting love to animals. And that became the world's largest no-kill sanctuary. Not a shelter where they're looking to adopt. Leo has taken in dogs, cats, horses, you name it. If you go to deltarescue.org, you'll see the videos. What he has done to grow this thing is nothing short of amazing. This is a guy who found his passion in life and then executed on it. In like a million ways, I have so much respect for him, what he's done, because he doesn't do it. He does it because he loves animals and he understands that there's abandoned, malnutrition, abused animals. He wants to take them all in. He doesn't say no. The guy's amazing. And I love helping people who I believe in. And Leo Grillo and the work of Delta Rescue is something I can get 100% behind. But here's the thing. We talk a lot on the show about, grants and waste and fraud. Leo Grillo built this all on his own. And he relies solely on donations from people like me and you. I have literally made a personal donation to Leo Grillo. I believe this much in what he's doing. Like, I love animals. I've rescued dogs, but this isn't a shelter. He takes care of these things for life. And the only way that we can keep Delta Rescue going is by personal contributions. So please check out Delta Rescue at deltarescue.org. Think about if you can make a contribution yourself. And then do me a favor. There's an estate planning kit at the top. It's a little pull down menu. Go to that. Download it, read it over, pray on it. If you have an old 401k or a stock that's sitting around, and you're like, what am I going to do with this thing? You can talk to an estate planning person and see about transferring it to Delta Rescue. And it might even have a tax benefit for you now. So go to deltarescue.org, check out the great work of Delta Rescue, check out that estate planning kit, and please join me in making a donation. All right, before we get to Congressman Harris and Congressman Jordan, I got to tell you, if you run a company or you're the person in charge of finances, I just became your best friend because I'm going to tell you about Ramp. Ramp is a software management system that handles your expenses. So I know this because I run a company and I got employees. and we're running around all the time with different expenses, subscriptions. You know what I'm talking about if you're that person. And so how do you manage it? Well, for a while, you know that a lot of companies spend 80% of their time chasing down receipts, setting up expense accounts, etc. Well, what Ramp does is it makes your life so much easier. It simplifies it. The Ramp system issues you virtual cards for expenses, physical cards like Visa cards, so that you can hand them out to your employees. You can set limits. It's so refreshing how much time it saves you. 80% of most businesses spend their time in this area on tactical busy work, like chasing down things. This literally allows you to free up all that time and spend it on the business. It's so easy to switch over. It takes 15, 20 minutes. You upload some bank information. I did it myself. I know what this is like, and you get going. And they got this white glove concierge service that will make sure that they seamlessly help you integrate your current systems. Over 25,000 businesses already use Ramp, including Spotify, the Boys and Girls Club, and they were recently ranked #1 on spend management by G2. So these guys are really good at what they do, and big organizations trust them. And for a limited time, you get $250 right now if you sign up for Ramp. All you need to do is sign up. You get $250 when you do. So go to ramp.com/Spicer, ramp.com/Spicer. Cards are issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. Ramp.com/Spicer. All right. My first guest is Congressman Andy Harris of Maryland. He's a doctor, a Navy veteran, and the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. Congressman Harris, always great to see you. Let's start with this Elon Musk tweet storm, or X storm, whatever the heck he's calling it now. Is that concerning to you and your colleagues, how he's framing this bill now?
Well, no, actually, my colleagues in the Freedom Caucus, we like the fact that he's talking about the potential effect of the big, beautiful bill on the budget deficit. We think we have to get the deficits under control. And the way the bill is structured, the spending is up front. The savings is in the last 5 years. That's pretty typical in Washington. And bringing that, again, to the Senate's attention, I think is important because we don't want the Senate to certainly roll back any of the spending reductions we have made. And hopefully they might add a couple more.
So are you happy with the current level of savings in the bill right now? I mean, you guys all voted for it. I would assume that well, let's just put it this way. Why don't you tell me, what do you think of the current savings that are in the budget bill?
I think we didn't go as far as we could. The president said we should attack waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. There's still hundreds of billions of dollars left on the table of waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. I understand the politics of it, though. This was pretty good in terms of deficit reduction, but I think we could have gone further, and I hope the Senate does.
So one of the things that the White House seems to be doing by sending up this, what they call a rescissions bill yesterday, is saying, hey, just because it's not in the bill doesn't mean you can't cut spending. So is it your goal or hope that there's additional spending cuts outside of the big, beautiful bill?
Well, I would hope that that's true, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, there are people balking at a $9 billion rescission bill. Again, when the big, beautiful bill has $150 billion a year over 10 years spending reductions. So I'm not sure there's going to be that much spending reduction outside of this bill. Certainly, the first rescissions bill is low-hanging fruit. Obviously, USAID went way off the rails in terms of what they were funding around the world. And honestly, PBS and NPR should have been defunded a long time ago. There's no reason for federal taxpayer dollars to flow into those two entities. They can raise the money on their own, and there's plenty of other competition. There's no need, again, to tax American citizens to pay for PBS or NPR.
And I got to be honest with you. If this effort doesn't defund them, I don't know what will.
Nothing will. The bottom line is that we should have done this years ago. There's some people in rural areas say, well, but people still listen to that station. Okay, they can listen to that station. It just shouldn't be funded with taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. I know I've said this over and over again on the show, and I ideologically, there's no question that there's a bias. But I am a more fundamentalist when it comes to the funding, and it sounds like you are too, which is I don't really care. If they suddenly started writing right-wing stories, I'd say this isn't a government function. We shouldn't be using taxpayer dollars to be in the news business or the so-called news business.
That's absolutely right. Look, 50 years ago, there might have been a reason when you didn't have a whole lot of radio stations, you didn't have a whole lot of TV stations. But now you pick up your smartphone, you can literally get 1,000 different radio stations, probably 1,000 different television stations. The bottom line is there's no need for the federal government intervention in the broadcast industry in PBS or NPR.
So the Congressional Budget Office put out some what they call baseline scenarios of the debt. Okay, so there's the deficit, which is what we spend more than we have yearly, and then that adds to the debt. Under like every scenario, even under the lowest scenario, the debt increases 116% between 2019 and 2032. How concerning is the debt to you and the members of the Freedom Caucus?
It's tremendously concerning. It's also concerning to objective traders in the bond market. The bottom line is that we have high mortgage rates. One of the reasons is right now is because people buying a house are competing with the federal government to borrow money. And when that competition occurs, interest rates go up. It's simple economics. The bottom line is until the federal government stops competing with businesses and individuals to borrow money, those interest rates will be high and it'll put a brake on the economy. It's very important for us to get that federal deficit under control so the federal government doesn't have to borrow between $2 and $2.5 trillion over the next few years, each and every year.
So you guys passed the bill. It headed over to the Senate. I think to boil it down pretty simply, I'd say there's two kind of camps in the Senate. There's the sort of Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, don't cut more. We're cutting too much camp. And then there's the Rand Paul, Rick Scott, Ron Johnson camp, which is we're not cutting spending enough or affecting the deficit. Which camp wins over there?
Well, I think, look, we had two camps in the House as well. We were able to pull the bill as far as I think we probably could have pulled the bill without, the more moderate wing of the party objecting. I think the Senate's going to have to realize they can't wander far off that mark. I'm hoping they wander a little bit more into deficit reduction. But if they wander in the other direction, it is not going to pass when it comes back to the House. There are several members who have said they voted yes to get it over to the Senate. But if it comes back with less deficit reduction, and that is particularly the Inflation Reduction Act and the Medicaid fraud, waste, and abuse, secondary to the Obamacare expansion, the bottom line is that those two programs, the IRA and Obamacare, are two programs that every Republican voted against, except for one. One voted for Obamacare, but every other Republican voted against it. Every Republican voted against the IRA, and now we're having trouble cutting those back. So it's again, I think it's where it needs to be now. If it moves, if it backslides, it's going to have problems in the House.
Do you think part of it is the reality? Meaning, when you vote against or for defunding Obamacare or whatever, and you kind of know in the back of your head it's never going to happen. For some of your colleagues, it's maybe an easy vote, but when they know that it's actually on the line, it's a lot tougher of a vote.
Well, I think that's what's happened here. I mean, the bottom line is that the reforms we want to Medicaid, again, the fraud, waste, and abuse was rampant once Obamacare expanded it to young, healthy people and increased the subsidies way over the subsidies for pregnant women, the disabled, children. The bottom line is that this was a vote that was as we say, a live fire vote. I mean, this is the one. Yeah, if this passes, there will be those cuts to that Obamacare expansion, and they're well-deserved cuts. They're well-needed cuts, but they will exist.
So I put a chart out on social media, and it shows that under the Congressional Budget Office, this year, 2025, the federal government will spend $695 billion in Medicaid. Okay. In 2034, under the House Reconciliation Bill, 2034, the federal government will spend $847 billion in Medicaid. Now, you're a doctor. You're a really smart guy. I didn't take math in college, admittedly. I'll be upfront about that. But I do know, and you don't have to be a doctor to know this and be as smart as Andy Harris, but I know that 847 is much bigger than 695. The question I have for you is that why are we allowing the discussion to be about the word cut. This is $847 billion in 2034 is more, a lot more, $152 billion or $53 billion more than the $695 billion that the Congress is allocating for Medicaid in this year. Like, what are we why are we allowing ourselves to get brought into this conversation? We need to call out Democrats and say, you're stupid. You don't how is this less? Where's the cut show? Like, the math is so simple. The charts and the graphs are so simple. And yet we're allowing the media and the Democrats to talk about cuts.
That's absolutely right. Look, we do cut waste, fraud, and abuse, but the American people want that cut. But we increase spending, but we're increasing spending in the underlying Medicaid program. And that's what we should talk about. We should talk about the fact that we are increasing spending 25% over the next 10 years. And everywhere except inside the Capital Beltway, that is actually considered not a cut. And I just had this discussion with a journalist. I said, look, journalists should be much more careful with their words. When you're increasing spending by 25% over the next 10 years, that is not a cut anywhere except in the Capital Beltway. But we are cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. And the American people want us to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, not only in Medicaid, but throughout the federal government.
100%. But I guess the question that I don't even understand is, to your point about the journalist, this is a graph, okay? 695, 847. Every Republican House member, heck, every Republican should be walking around with this chart and say, this is more, right? You're absolutely right. Washington is the only place where I can say, I have $5. I would like 10. And you'd say, hey, Sean, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you 8. And I go, Congressman, you just cut me $2, right? This is an insane mentality. And yet we whether it's, with all due respect, I don't think they're journalists. If you can't figure out math, then you're not a journalist. You're a media personality for the left. We should just be walking around with this graph everywhere we're going and saying, this is how much we're increasing Medicaid. Full stop.
That's absolutely right. I've shown that graph on the House floor. I've actually given speeches on the House floor showing the graph, saying this is, and you're absolutely right. Every member should have that graph. They should put it all on their social media. The bottom line is we are cutting waste, fraud, and abuse and increasing Medicaid spending.
Yes, that's it. Full stop. And by the way, and I think that there's an additional comma, and the fight to root out waste and cut the deficit continues. Like, I think we need to tell people that this is happening. I started this conversation with you by talking about the Elon tweeting out a bunch of stuff. The president was on social media yesterday too, going after Rand Paul. And I got to say, I get that he's not happy that Rand's not on board, but I do appreciate Rand's tenacity in tackling and highlighting the debt, as you have done in the House.
That's absolutely right. And it's important that we remind our colleagues of that, because it is probably one of the most serious threats to the future of America right now is, in fact, our federal debt and a federal deficit and debt that are causing us to spend over $1 trillion a year in interest payments alone. That doesn't end well. And we have to turn our attention to it. The president has said he wants to balance the budget. I take him at his word. I think we should take every opportunity. And the first opportunity presenting itself is the reconciliation bill and the rescission bills.
Do you believe that I know a lot of people say, well, the CBO numbers are wrong. And I was the budget committee spokesman for 3 years. They're notoriously wrong. Do you believe, as some in the White House do, that actually this bill will result in a lower deficit?
It might, if we have growth above 3% over the 10-year period, which historically has just never occurred over a 10-year period. I think it occurred only once in the post-World War II era. The bottom line is we have to do more than just stabilize the deficit or slightly reduce it. We have to get on a path to a balanced budget. And that's a very different. That's very, very different. We can argue now how many angels fit on the head of a pin about whether or not we're going to make slight reductions in the deficit. But when you're sitting at a $2 trillion deficit, you need way more than slight reductions over time, and we have to get on that path.
So totally agree with that, right? Then what are we doing? I feel like if it wasn't for Elon Musk, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. Like, I get it. Ron Johnson talks about going back to pre-pandemic spending levels, which I agree with. Like, why are we not? It's like everyone goes, yeah, we need to get back to doing this. And somehow I actually, the one problem I have with the growth argument is I feel like it's an excuse to keep spending and not tackling some of the systemic problems in our federal budget.
That's absolutely right, because if you think about it, what the growth projections do is actually provide increased revenue. They don't decrease spending. They balance the budget by actually collecting more taxes from people. The bottom line is that's not what we should do. We have a spending problem, and every Republican will say we have a spending problem, not a taxation problem, and then they'll continue to support more spending.
Yeah. Well, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was out on TV talking about what the president was articulating in this thing, social media post against Rand Paul. I want to play you what he had to say on it.
I'm a fiscal hawk, but I am also a realist. And the way to think about this is every $300 billion is 1% of GDP. And as the clip that you just said, or you just showed, where I said we didn't get here in a year, we're not going to get out of it in a year, that we have to bring this down gradually, because we want to do two things. We want to cut and constrain spending, and we want to grow the economy. And what Senator Paul is asking for or advocating for, I think, could cause a sudden stop in the economy. So, I'm a deficit hawk, but I'm also a realist.
You say it could cause a sudden stop. You're saying that this is too radical to flip the switch like this, to cut. I mean, he probably wants to cut, a trillion or a couple trillion, right? You say that would be too dramatic.
Well, Robert, a trillion would be 3% of GDP.
Yeah. And that would, what would that do? I mean, because he's, I think he's a pretty smart guy. I have him on the show a lot. What do you believe that would do?
Well, look, what's important here is our debt to GDP. Yeah. So that if we don't grow, then we won't grow the tax base, and we're not going to grow revenues. We're not going to grow the economy. So we inherited a mess, yeah, and we have to constrain spending, cut spending, and then grow our way out of this.
So, Congressman, the problem that I have with what Secretary Bessent is saying is it's almost like an academic argument. We can't cut this much. We can only do this. We need to get growth. I believe, like you and I were talking about with NPR and PBS, that we should just be going through the budget and saying, does this program work? Is it effective? Is it serving the American people well? Yes, no. Increase it, decrease it, cut it, eliminate it. It's like we're having this academic exercise over numbers and not saying, like, when I send money to the federal government, I love serving, living in this country. I've served this country. You've served this country. Like, we have to have a strong military. We have to have roads and bridges. I get that. But what I want to know is, are you looking at what I'm sending and saying, okay, hey, look, this program from 1922 really doesn't exist anymore. We don't look through DOD the way that we should to find spending. And I feel like that what Elon's team did through Doge was start to look under the hood and say, is this program making sense? Is it actually effective? And as opposed to going through an academic exercise and saying, let's just get 3% or 2%. It's not, to me, I get targets are good, but I guess the bigger issue to me is, why are we not doing this constantly?
That's right. We have to go line by line, item by item. But the other thing we have to do is to put some more responsibility for some programs on the states. And that is one major thing that the BBB does, which is in the food stamp program, which is now funded 100% by the federal government. States have no responsibility in funding. What that results in are states who don't care whether you're eligible to be on. They just want to put more people on it. Is we actually now said, well, states actually have to start paying a share of it. That's really important. And we should look throughout the federal budget, and where there is no real federal nexus for using federal tax dollars is asking the states to pay more of their share. And that's whether it's, through emergency management, whether it's roads, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's some of the aid programs. Look, the states should pick up more of it. They have balanced budget amendments. We don't. And that's the most important check on the progression of government and the progression of taxation is in the states. If they want to spend more, they got to raise taxes. And the bottom line is they will have tax revolts. We had it in Maryland 10 years ago when we elected Larry Hogan because of the taxes and fees of the former administration in Maryland. That's a break that the states have that the federal government unfortunately doesn't have.
Is there any red line for you? You mentioned you don't want the Senate to tinker with it too much.
Yeah, it cannot come back with fewer spending reductions, especially in the IRA and in the Medicaid waste, fraud, and abuse. If it comes back with again, a rollback of those spending reductions, I voted present the first time just to get it over to the Senate. I'll vote no this time.
And how many of your Freedom Caucus colleagues are in the same boat with you?
I suspect they're plenty enough to sink the bill if it comes back with a rollback of spending reductions.
And what about, I mean, President Trump needs this. I think politically you guys need this to get it done, to get the benefits of it into the economy. Frankly, otherwise people will get a tax increase. And so if the Senate tinkers with it, is there a concern that, hey, we just, I mean, what's the argument look like that says, let's just get it done and we'll go cut later?
Well, when we were at the White House 2 weeks ago, I think we made it clear to the president that spending is our red line. And I think he has to make that clear to the Senate that they can't tinker with the spending reductions. They can't reduce them. They can't roll them back. Because if they do, it will be a problem in the House. And, we only get one crack at this. We got to get it right.
Congressman Dr. Andy Harris, leader of the Freedom Caucus, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
Great conversation with Andy. I now want to bring in the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee and a founding member of the Freedom Caucus, Chairman Jim Jordan. Chairman Jordan, thanks for being back with us. Always enjoy our conversations.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about you coming on, there was this epic exchange from a hearing a little while ago on PBS and NPR. I want to just play it for the audience and remind them. Take a look.
Our current editorial leadership believes that was a mistake, as do I.
Yeah, the whole country knows that was a mistake. Definitely impacted the election, or I think it certainly impacted the election. How about the COVID origin story? That's a pretty big story too, right? Mr. Berliner said, we became fervent members of the team Natural Origin, even declaring that the lab leak was debunked by scientists. Turns out, though, the lab leak is what most people think actually caused the COVID virus.
Sorry, is there a question there?
There is. You guys were 0 for 3 on the three of the biggest stories in the last 5 years. You guys were 0 for 3, and yet you maintain that NPR is not biased?
All right. Chairman, when you had that conversation, and I played that clip where Catherine Mayer, she responds to you and says, I just didn't think it passed the smell test.
No, it doesn't. Not even close, Sean. Remember, one of their award-winning journalists at PBS, at NPR, did a survey of the editors for NPR in the DC area, 87 editors, and he asked and determined what their political affiliation was. It was 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans. So not 44-43, not 50-37, 87-0. And yet she maintains that they are, not biased in any way. It just ridiculous. And as you point out, this just doesn't pass the smell test. And this is from one of their own who is liberal, who is a Democrat, who worked for them for 23 years and was an award-winning journalist. But even he thought they had strayed from what they're supposed to be, particularly when they get your money and your viewers' money.
So night after night, not every night, I have Republican lawmakers on. And when I ask them this question, because it's a pet peeve of mine, I just don't believe that the federal government should be in the business of this. And everyone agrees with me. You've led the charge on this. Is it done for good? Are we done with them? Or at the end of this year, are we going to hear an excuse why a Republican House and a Republican Senate couldn't get it over the finish line?
I think it'll pass next week in the House. And this is the bill that says your tax money, your viewers' tax money, Americans that I represent in the 4th District of Ohio shouldn't have their tax money subsidizing a news organization. You don't get subsidized by the taxpayer. So yeah,
I would. Just for the record, if you want to, I will take it if I can get a USAID grant or something.
Yeah. So I do think it'll pass. Frankly, it should have passed. I'll be honest. I wish we'd have been doing these rescission bills all along. We should have passed the NPR bill, rescinding the money, taxpayer money going to Corporation for Public Broadcasting and NPR. We should have passed it the week of that hearing. The day after that hearing, it should have been on the floor and say, get rid of this. Remember when President Trump gave his joint address to Congress a couple months ago? He did a great job, great speech. But the best part of the speech, I thought, was when he rattled off all the stupid things American tax money is going to. We should have been doing every single one of those, one a day, one a week. I don't care. I'm glad it's coming now, but I wish we'd have been doing this all along.
So it begs the question: why aren't you? Not you, because I look at this is Jim McLaughlin and John McLaughlin did this poll, and I had him on the other day. Voters are massively in favor of getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, excessive and inefficient government, and yet it doesn't happen. And it could, normally politicians follow the voters,
Yeah.
like, oh, that's what you want. Why doesn't it get done? Is it just not the reward isn't there?
Well, I think again, you sort of have to wait for the executive branch to send us the package, because the way the crazy rules that we have in Congress, if money's been appropriated and then these agencies were spending it in stupid ways, to rescind it, the federal government, the executive branch has to send it back to us. So we've been waiting on the Office of Management and Budget to send it back to us, but we've been so focused on the big beautiful bill, which I understand it's an important piece of legislation. I think a good piece of legislation, that the rescission stuff hasn't come yet. It's coming next week, but I thought we should have done. In fact, I even called Russ Vought at OMB several weeks back and said, send us the rescission bills. Send us, even if you just got to break them down into small pieces. We'll do one, like I said, one a day, one a week. But it's the whole complexities of the government and how it works. And if you send it and it doesn't pass, then you're obligated to spend it under our constitutional system. So I get some of that, but I still think we could have done. It'd have been nice if we'd had these things earlier and been doing them in smaller chunks all along.
I agree. So the first chunk, $9.5 billion, got sent. Is that going to pass?
I think so. I think it will pass the House, and then we'll see in this. You never know with the Senate, but again, I think it will, because I go back to that moment when President Trump was rattling them all off, and it was like maybe the strongest applause in the chamber, and I think that was probably happening in living rooms around the country who were Americans watching that speech, as you point out. So Americans get this. They said we all have our favorite example. Mine is Sesame Street in Iraqi television. I mean, why are we sending taxpayer money to put Big Bird, Bert and Ernie on Baghdad TV? I don't know. That seems stupid to me. Why? I think a single bill on that matter would have been fine months ago. But now it's in this bill, and we'll go from there.
And the worst part is, again, this is like, I get this isn't consequential, but I believe every dollar that's spent should be respected. The thing that most people don't get is that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting licenses the children's television network broadcast of Sesame Street. Big Bird's a millionaire at the least, right? This is not some government program. Sesame Street is a show owned by the children's television network that sells merchandise, makes millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then we license the show. So when all you're doing when you're then relicensing and sending it to Iraq is making them richer. It's not like we're funding this in the government.
Great point.
But the thing that's so interesting on the rescission packages, is there any Republican niche group that you've heard so far that says, I don't know that we can do this? This is what I worry about. It's someone who says, I wanted to be for it, but page 546 has this little pet project for my district on it. Is there any group that's emerged that says, I can't?
There's a couple senators I saw in today's press. There's a couple senators who are concerned about certain elements. I think they get over that. I think what drives the legislation in my mind is what we've been talking about. It's NPR, it's the Corporation for Public Broadcast, PBS, it's that stuff. I think that drives it, because everyone sort of gets, no, taxpayer money shouldn't be used to fund the media. We got all kinds of media. Some is sort of biased to the right, some is biased to the left, most is biased to the left, but we have all kinds of media. Taxpayers shouldn't be subsidized. So I think that's what's driving the bill, and that'll be the focus. So I think it passes, even though there's some other things in the USAID programs that people are concerned about.
So Josh Hawley in the Senate, if we talk about the big, beautiful bill, has expressed some concerns about cuts. I want to play you what Hillary Clinton said about cuts. Okay, this again is where I go, why are we not playing this everywhere right now? This is Hillary Clinton talking about public benefits. Take a look.
As to illegal aliens, we agree with you that we do not think the comprehensive health care benefits should be extended to those who are undocumented workers and illegal aliens. We do not want to do anything to encourage more illegal immigration into this country. We know now that too many people come in for medical care as it is. We certainly don't want them having the same benefits that American citizens are entitled to have.
According to this polling that I had on the show the other day with the McLaughlin brothers, 2-to-1 margin, 68 to 29. 2/3 of Americans believe waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid system is a problem. 4 and 5, 79 to 16 support requiring able-bodied Americans to work, to be looking for a job or attending school. This, to me, is an easy lift. Our own side should not be undermining this.
No, Medicaid is for the disabled. Medicaid is for moms and single moms and kids. It is not for illegal migrants to be on that system. And frankly, if you're an adult male and you're able-bodied and you're in Medicaid, you should have to work. If you're getting taxpayer money, you're able-bodied adult, you got to work. That's just a fundamental principle. For the left to say anything different just makes no sense to me. I don't think it's accurate in any way. And what I love most about this, I said this on the floor, the House floor during the debate. I said, this bill's a good bill because the left and the Democrats hate it. And they hate it because it embraces common sense core Republican principles. It says we're going to cut taxes so parents can keep more of their money to spend on their goals and their dreams. It says we're going to secure the border to make sure we have that we don't have what we saw under Joe Biden. It says if you're an able-bodied adult and you're in our welfare systems, you're going to have to work. And it says to moms and dads, we're going to give you school choice. 4 fundamental Republican, conservative, common sense principles. Of course, the Democrats don't like that. That's why it's a good piece of legislation. And I think that's why it ultimately gets over the line and gets signed into law by July 4th.
When the McLaughlins released this polling that focused just on battleground districts, the key to maintaining a House majority. Yeah. They wrote this in the memo. The path to winning includes stopping any tax increase, creating savings by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, eliminating taxpayer benefits for illegal aliens, and preserving and protecting safety nets like Medicaid for American citizens who need it. But then they came to this really interesting finding. 2 in 5 voters, 43%, continue to be unaware that the 2017 Tax and Jobs Act is set to expire, leaving what'll be a huge tax increase. So the question I have for you is, as somebody who's out there a lot talking about this, how do we message about the consequences of not passing the bill and the benefits of passing it?
Well, it's funny. I almost want to flip it around and say, that's why I believe this thing will pass, because in the end, if it doesn't, a tax increase will happen on the good families, good small business owners, the good people I get the privilege of representing in the 4th District of Ohio. And every single Republican member has to think about that. Do you really want taxes going up on the people you get the privilege of serving? No, we don't. That's a fundamental principle. So in the end, that is the driving element, I think, in this legislation. And then when you add to it, we've also appropriated the resources to keep the border secure, which President Trump has done. We've also given moms and dads school choice. And we've also said, if you're able-bodied in our welfare system, you got to work. I think when you put that together, now, should we have achieved more savings? Of course, I'm all for more savings. But we got this balance. We got to get the votes. But those 4 fundamental principles are why this thing gets done. And the chief one is the one you just pointed out, Sean. If we don't pass this, taxes go up. We're the party of lower taxes. Let's make sure we get it passed.
From a conference standpoint, do you think that you guys are I mean, like you, I see Jim Jordan out there all the time, right? You are one of the leading voices for the America First agenda and for what this bill and et cetera will do. Do you think that based on that polling, we're doing enough to let people know what the consequences are?
I mean, I guess you can always argue we can do more. I think we are doing enough. I think the country gets it. When I'm out and about talking with folks, I was in Iowa last week helping 3 of our candidates. When you're out and about, I think people get it all over the country. Middle class, working class folks understand it. So I think we just got to keep it up. What you're doing is great. Keep talking about it. We all just have to do that. That's politics. They're going to say, oh, it slashes this, which is baloney. We just got to tell the truth. And point it out. And if we do that, I think we'll be fine. Plus, the American people, I think, are wise to the left now. I always say the left has a template they follow. The left will tell a lie. I mean, the most recent one is, of course, Joe Biden's just fine. The left will tell a lie. Mainstream media will report the lie. Big tech will amplify the lie. And then when you tell the truth, they call you a racist or they'll call you something else. Well, the country's now figured that out. And they really figured it out on November 5th. And they said, we're done with all the crazy left stuff. We're going to go with common sense. And they understand this bill is common sense.
So the bill is big. It may be beautiful, but it is definitely big. It's over 1,000 pages long. And one of your colleagues yesterday, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, came out and said, hey, I didn't know that there was this 2-page provision in there that dealt with AI. The first thing I want to ask you is that when you do big bills like this and you jam them the way that they, and I get it. Like to some degree, when you got a bill this big and you're trying to, patch it together, you got to balance it to get the warring factions. Are you concerned about how the process went down, though, based on what Marjorie said yesterday?
Well, I mean, look, yeah, what's the old line? The legislative process is always kind of messy. Just the way frankly, it's the way the founders kind of put it together. It's never supposed to be smooth and easy because they want to protect liberty. They want to protect freedom, and they want us to protect, property and wealth and rights and liberties and free speech and all those things we have. So it's never really easy. Sometimes when you do these big bills, there's some of that happens. But we've been talking about reconciliation, working on it for months and months. I know what came out of our committee, where we focused on what needs to happen to maintain the security on our border. We had resources in there for ICE agents, 10,000 ICE agents, more detention space, detention beds, more ability to repatriate people back to their native country, all those things. So it is a big piece of legislation. Those things kind of happen. But I think we've been working on this for months. And it's, again, a good piece of legislation because of those 4 fundamental principles that I talked about.
She brought up her concern specifically in those 2 pages was about artificial intelligence being regulated by the federal government. Now, if you recall, back in the 90s when I was a Hill staffer, we did this with the internet. We basically said we don't need 50 states trying to regulate the internet in its infancy. I actually thought it was a smart move then because we needed to allow innovation to work its way. Yep. Are you concerned about this AI provision?
No, not really. I love March. She's a great member and a good friend. And I think she's great for our party in so many ways. But I do think if you don't have this provision, then you have, it basically comes down to then what's California going to make as their rule, and that's going to be the rule because they're the biggest state. And is that necessarily good? Well, it could be, I guess. But most of the time, policies California comes up with aren't really that good. I mean, just look at the state, look at all the people leaving, everything else. So I think that's the sort of as you point out, Sean, that's sort of the fundamental concern is if you have 50 states doing different things, you wind up going to the lowest common denominator, and that becomes the standard, and that inevitably winds up being, California, New York, and Illinois, which is not what we want.
And people need to, I think your point is so well taken because when you think about car standards, academic standards, so many times they'll look and say, hey, that's the big dog market-wise. We got to do what they're doing. Yep. And for folks on our side, on the conservative side, we'll get screwed on that. You brought up Joe Biden, though, and this is where I want to this is like something that Ed Martin, the pardon attorney for the president at the Department of Justice, is looking into. Is your concern, if you agree with this, that the pardons weren't properly issued, or that there's a bigger issue with intent, meaning that some people argue whether or not he signed it isn't the big issue. It's whether he intended to do it or not, right? And I think there's a difference.
No, it's the latter. The only, in my judgment, the only concern is the latter. I mean, whether he physically signed it or not. I mean, remember, too, under our Constitution, the pardon power is broad and solely resides with the presidency, with the president. So that is a fundamental right that the president has to pardon pretty much whoever he darn well wants is sort of what the Constitution says. It's an exclusive power that invested in the commander-in-chief, invested in the president. I think the real question is, did he know what was going on? Yeah. And that's a legitimate issue. If you read, I read Tapper's book on the flight out to Iowa and the flight back.
Please tell me you didn't pay for it. Please tell me you didn't
pay
for it.
Well, I forget who got it for me. I had someone send it to me, so I ended up reading it. But I think the biggest takeaway for that is the media. I mean, The media lied to us, and now Jake Tapper lied to us for 4 years, and now he's making money telling the truth. I mean, made money on both sides of the deal. Such a deal. So, I think that's the big takeaway. The country saw it themselves. We particularly saw it on the debate stage. That debate when President Trump did so well and Joe Biden did so bad. So, it is what it is. I think Chairman Comer's going to do a little investigating there, and I think that's fine.
But Tapper apparently has 2 more books in the works. 1, Russia, the major hoax that no one saw, and 2, Biden Inc., how the Bidens profited off government and no one knew about it either. Yeah, they're apparently those are in the queue. But to your point, how do we? What concerns me is intent. Like, how do we figure out whether or not? And I think this is important. I think it's important to know whether the president of the United States knew who was making decisions in this country or not, and if not him, then who? How do we find that out?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we can dig around and do our oversight work that the Constitution requires, but I think there's some of these individuals will claim executive privilege when they come in. They'll assert that privilege. I guess you would have to get someone to come forward and say, almost like a whistleblower. And I don't think you're going to get that from the key people around the president and the first lady, President Biden and the first lady. I mean, this is Zients, this is Klain, this is Donlin, this is Ricchetti. These are the key people. Are they going to say that? I doubt it. They're going to come in and say, no, every time I was around. They're going to say what they said for 3 years and 8 months or whatever, 9 months is. They're going to say that same thing. So, but I do think we can kind of poke around and find out, see what we can discover. But my gut tells me there's going to be privilege asserted by many of them if, in fact, Chairman Comer brings them in for a deposition.
Last thing I just want to ask you is this wave of anti-Semitism. What concerns me about what happened in Colorado and last week in D.C. is the left. You talk about the role of the media and the cover-up of Joe Biden. Yeah. What concerns me is people being attacked for their faith, and the left is silent on this. The media is complicit in this cover-up as well. Yeah. And I just wonder what. Like, I didn't ever think back in the day that this would be a partisan issue. We'd be fighting about lower government yep. and lower taxes, and these guys would be fighting for big government. But I never thought I'd see a Democratic Party that was silent on the issue of anti-Semitism the way that the current left and the media are now. Yeah, no, I didn't either. And it's when I'm out and about, I always say that not all Democrats are crazy, but the left that controls their party is, and the left has fostered this environment that has led to these, the attack on Governor Shapiro's residence and his family, and the attack that killed 2 Israeli embassy people, and then of course this crazy stuff in Colorado. The left's moral equivalence they've tried to create, which is just ridiculous, of between Israel and Hamas. I mean, like, Hamas is terrorism. They're a terrorist organization. So there's that element. There's what's going on college campuses, the how they tolerate the threats and the crazy teachings on college campuses, and we've seen that play out. And then you couple all that with the crazy immigration policies of the previous administration, and you get this terrible mix, and led to, I think that's what created this situation in Boulder. So we got to fight all of it. We got to keep talking about it, and when we do that, I think we're having a hearing right now. We're having a hearing today on college campuses and the coordination there, and we know what's going on there with, it looks like some anti-competitive activities they're taking there. Not to mention all the stuff we saw over the last 2 years. Crazy things that they allowed, particularly the crazy anti-Semitic stuff that was permitted on these campuses as well. So we just got to speak out against it every single time. Chairman Jim Jordan, I always appreciate your time and your insights. Keep fighting the good fight, sir. You too. Thanks, Sean. You bet. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Great conversation today. Amazing panel coming your way tomorrow, and then James Blair on Friday. Huge week. Hit that subscription button and the notification button so you never miss an episode. Remember to go to SeanSpicer.com to sign up for my free newsletter. Send it to 5 friends. It's a great Father's Day gift, by the way. All right, we'll see you back here tomorrow on Thursday at the Sean Spicer Show. Have a good night.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.